Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video we're taking a look at some very fun battles in the Open Master League, hunting Dawn Wings with a level 50 Bewear. These battles were submitted to the channel by a member of the community, Ficht, so many thanks for the battle submission. Now it goes without saying, Bewear is not a Pokemon that you should use if you're looking to climb Elo. It only gets to about 3,500 combat power, and its stat product is similar to Torterra. But what it can do, due to its normal fighting typing, is be Dawn Wing's worst nightmare. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and let's take a look at Bewear hunting Dawn Wings in the Master League. And the Dawn Wings is on the lead in the first match, leading into a Palkia. Opponents save switches into their own, and they're always going to be one turn behind in this matchup. So Ficht can very comfortably stay in here, outpaced by one turn to the Spatial Rend, and just like that, force an early shield. Opponent is forced to fire off energy. They will go for the Aqua Tail. Aqua Tail not going to KO, and the Palkia is able to win switch for the opponent. In comes Bewear. Bewear, oh my, Bewear is not the tankiest here. Bewear no shields. It's the Spatial Rend that almost KOs. Bewear able to leave with fractional HP and a superpower loaded. What is the opponent going to be sending in here? Opponent sends in Dawn Wings. Oh no. Do they not know Bewear has payback? Bewear goes for the payback. That's a one-hit KO. In the back is Dialga. In comes Duskmane. And there's just nothing the opponent can do in this moment. They're going to be firing off energy with the Dialga, but Duskmane has two shields to hide behind, and the opponent basically only has one Dragon Breath energy advantage. Duskmane is going to be firing off the Dark Pulse. Opponent is going to no shield, and at this point, Duskmane can just farm up to 3 total Dark Pulses and win the game. 2 will be enough to KO, and the third will be able to grab the shield. Dialga still staying in the fight, hoping against hope that it's going to be able to outpace here, but it's just a losing endeavor. Duskmane makes it to that third Dark Pulse, knocking out the Dialga. The opponent, zero respect for Master League Bewear, and it ends up costing them. Neutral lead in the next match, Palkia versus Shadow Mewtwo. A Side Strike, even from the Shadow, is not going to be enough to KO here, but it just does so much damage that we are going to see Palkia respect it with a shield. Palkia over-farming, firing off the Aqua Tail, looking to put pressure back onto the Mewtwo and grab the shield. Opponent will commit the shield. Again, this Side Strike will not KO, but it does so much damage that Palkia is double shielding. But this means no shields for Bewear later in the match. In comes Dialga. Dialga to be met with the Spatial Rend. Spatial Rend will not be enough to KO. Opponent is going to let that through. In comes Duskmane. Duskmane farming up, getting to the Dark Pulse. And that Dark Pulse is going to be able to knock out. They have a ton of energy here. They're forced to use a shield, and it's a CMP tie. This Roar of Time is going to hurt. Opponent, oh, they're actually running Draco Meteor. So unfortunately for the opponent, they weren't able to get that Legacy move. And since Draco does debuff their attack, this means that Duskmane exits the matchup healthier than it would be. We're going to see Duskmane firing off the Dark Pulse, being able to pick up the knockout. In the back, opponent has not a Dawn Wings, but a Duskmane. And that could mean trouble, because Duskmane has Sunsteel Strike, and that move has an incredibly high base power. It all comes down to this. Can Bewear tank the Sunsteel Strike? Yes, it can! Bewear with the clutch survive of its lifetime, hanging on, knocking out Duskmane with the payback, and taking the win. We've got a mirror lead in the next match, Palkia versus Palkia. Neither trainer has Best Buddy boost equipped, so this CMP tie will be a true coin flip. Ficht goes for the catch, opponent holds onto their energy, and now they're going to be able to connect with multiple charge moves onto the Duskmane. They're going to go for the Aqua Tail, that does quite a lot of damage. Palkia continuing to farm. This could potentially be a Spatial Rend. We do see the shield. It is the Spatial Rend. Opponent switches out, sending in a Dawn Wings. Oh my goodness, they have to be so weak to Duskmane in the back to make this switch, as they're going to have to double shield, because Duskmane is going to make a second Dark Pulse. And if they double shield, then Bewear could take over in the end game, but they let it go, because they have Dialga in the back. And suddenly, things are looking a bit tricky here. Dialga has a shield, it has a small energy lead, and even though Bewear does have access to superpower, again, it's only 3,500 combat power. Bewear going for the superpower, we will see the shield from Dialga and the combo play into the Palkia. Palkia connects with the Spatial Rend. Spatial Rend is going to get Dialga quite low, and now it all comes down to this. Can the opponent potentially make 2 Iron Heads, or can they catch the superpower? This will be a very close game. Bewear farming up, going for the superpower, and the opponent gets the catch. What a catch by the opponent, catching onto the Palkia. In comes Dialga, and they make the Iron Head. So unfortunate, overfarmed to avoid the catch, but the opponent had the perfect read. Great lead in the next match, Palkia versus Ho-Oh. Ho-Oh, with this lead, will typically like to stay in and Brave Bird, but to do so, they're letting Palkia get to the Aqua Tail, and this basically takes them into the red. We actually see this Ho-Oh commit a shield, so they are looking to preserve the Ho-Oh as they grab the shield back and switch out of here. Opponent is going to switch into Dawn Wings. Oh no, and they have just made a disastrous mistake as in comes Bewear. The Moongeist Beam is double resisted. The Dark Pulse is single resisted. There's just nothing this poor Dawn Wings can do. Dawn Wings connects with another Dark Pulse, but this is just going to be Bewear fully farming all the way down and exiting with a massive amount of energy. This energy, I don't think is going to go very far against the Ho-Oh, unfortunately, just because, again, 3,500 combat power. So the payback, you know what? That actually did more than I thought. Fair play. Congratulations, Bewear. That actually did more than I was expecting. The Ho-Oh is going to be able to make another Brave Bird. Palkia can survive this, not super comfortably. It's typically Dialga in the back with these teams, and there it is. Hello, Dialga. Dialga versus Duskmane in the ones. Honestly, I've played some Duskmane. I'm not 100% sure of what the best way to play it out is. Opponent goes straight for the Roar of Time. That is a massive shield. And we're going to see the Dark Pulse fired off by the Duskmane. Dark Pulse not going to be enough to KO, but Dark Pulse will set up a potential farm down. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. A familiar lead in the next match, the Palkia Mirror. Opponent does not have Best Buddy boost. Last time we saw him try and catch, and it's a simultaneous catch attempt. We see Duskmane versus a Tapu Koko. Tapu Koko was a Pokemon that I was planning on raiding to level 50. Unfortunately, I believe at the time it was last in raids. I had a local Audino nest, so I ended up prioritizing basically spending my free hours at the Audino nest instead of raiding, so I'm sitting on a bunch of Stardust, but unfortunately, I am not having access to a Master League Tapu Koko. In this instance, Duskmane is going to go for the KO with the Sunsteel Strike, but unfortunately, it's not to be. Tapu Koko with the double shield. Honestly, you have energy on the Palkia, so you could just bring in the Palkia, go for the Aqua Tail, and get rid of this Pokemon, but they switch out into their own Palkia, and the opponent is able to grab a shield. Ficht is going to overfarm and pick up the knockout with his own Aqua Tail. The opponent still has yet to reveal their final Pokemon. If they want to waste energy, then they can just bring back in the Tapu Koko, and that's exactly what they're going to do. So Bewear is going to need to be able to win the Zero Shield versus whatever's in the back, and it can. It's the Duskmane, and we know that Duskmane's Sunsteel Strike does massive damage, but what it does not do is KO Bewear. The payback is able to land, and it doesn't matter what they throw here. Opponent is going to fire off the Dark Pulse. That's sure as heck not going to KO, and that's game over. Great lead in the next match, Palkia versus Dawn Wings. Palkia does win the one straight Aqua Tail, so this is a very comfortable matchup to be in as the Palkia, as long as one shield is in play. Palkia goes for the Aqua Tail. We see a switch and a catch by the opponent as they catch onto Dialga. But I think they're going to regret switching out of that matchup, as now the Dawn Wings and its energy is going to be stuck against Bewear later in the game. Dark Pulse no shielded by the Dialga. Duskmane should be able to tank the Roar of Time and farm down. Roar of Time does do a massive amount of damage. Your opponent only ends up going for the Iron Head, hoping to make it to another move, but they do not get there. That's a huge farm down for the Duskmane. Opponent, if they send in the Dawn Wings, it's a 50-50 CMP tie, and they don't win it. Very unfortunate for the opponent. Duskmane, Dark Pulse, able to grab the shield, and you just let the Duskmane go. Duskmane has done its job. It got the shield advantage, and now you bring in Bewear, the final Pokemon. Oh, that's a big problem. It's Tapu Bulu in the back, and Tapu Bulu is a complete core breaker to this team once the Duskmane is out of the way. The unfortunate thing is this team is ABA weak to fairy types. The superpower connects. That actually does decent damage though. Surprisingly enough, the Bewear able to get some damage on this thing, and Tapu Bulu in a bit of a difficult position now. They're going to be hit with the Aqua Tail. This is resisted, but they're just running out of HP. They will commit the shield. Palkia gets to another Aqua Tail, and while this will not KO, I don't think, it's just going to be doing too much damage. They get Dragon Breath down, And just like that, in an instant, it's all over for the opponent. Dawnwings will be able to KO the Palkia, but it can't do anything to Bewear. In comes Bewear. Bewear does not care what they throw at it. Opponent will go for the Dark Pulse. That's just not going to do enough, and Bewear takes the win. A familiar sight greets us in the next match, another Palkia mirror. So far, he has tried to get the catch and unfortunately has gone 0 for 2. Gonna farm up to the Spatial Rend and third time's the charm, this time getting that catch onto the Duskmane. Duskmane save switch answered with Landorus, and this is a good Pokemon to bait out because this thing would absolutely crush Bewear. We actually do see a shield from the Duskmane. Duskmane gonna farm up and fire out the Sunsteel Strike. I was a little bit surprised at that shield because in doing so the opponent can just shield back and double up, and that means that unfortunately Palkia is in danger. Palkia has an Aqua Tail, but it loses charge attack priority to Landorus, which means when this Palkia gets brought back in, it's immediately going to be met with a Sandsear Storm that will have priority over the Aqua Tail. And there it is, in comes the Landorus. Landorus firing off the Sandsear Storm, or I should say in comes the Palkia into a Sandsear Storm from the Landorus. The Aqua Tail will be shielded, opponent switches out, and in the back, they have Duskmane. Duskmane gonna do a massive amount of damage with Sunsteel Strike. Duskmane goes for the Sunsteel Strike and barely able to hang on is the Bewear. Bewear returns fire with the Payback. Payback is able to get the KO. In comes Landorus. Landorus gets energy, and Landorus with energy is so deadly. It forces Palkia to throw, and the opponent's Palkia will just be too healthy. They bring it in, it farms down, and is able to take the game. We've got identical leads once again in the next match. Palkia mirrors are just everything in the Master League. It's one of the reasons why I love my best buddy Palkia so much, because then I don't have to rely on coin flips, or in this case, a catch. But we do see back-to-back catches there, catching the Spatial Rend onto Duskmane, and like last game, in comes Landorus. So this could be the exact same team as last game. Again, the better play here is to no-shield the Sandsear and just let it go, because then you can bring back in the Palkia, the opponent won't have any residual energy, and you can potentially knock out with an Aqua Tail if they're low enough, or if they're a bit too healthy, you can go for the Spatial Rend. But in this instance, this opponent, like the last one, is able to get the double up, which means that Palkia's energy, unfortunately, is not going to have priority here. In comes the Palkia, this time not going for the CMP tie. I do like that adjustment quite a bit, as Palkia is going to be able to farm up a little bit and then connect with the deadly Aqua Tail. So the Aqua Tail is going to be able to knock out the Landorus. In comes Palkia, and he does make it to a move. This is low enough where an Aqua Tail will knock out. The Aqua Tail is, oh, it's barely not enough to KO, but it's Dawnwings in the back. The perfect Pokemon to see. Oh my goodness, this poor Dawnwings. Dawnwings goes for the Moongeist Beam, and Dawnwings in shambles as that does not do nearly what it should. They make the Dark Pulse. Bewear does not care, having the back-to-back superpowers, but instead deciding to just farm down the opponent. We see a switch up in leads, the first Giratina altered so far. Giratina is going to be running Shadow Claw, Dragon Claw, and their choice of Shadow Sneak, Ancient Power, or in rare cases, Shadow Force. They are going to connect with the Dragon Claw, and Palkia will fire off the Spatial Rend. This does a ton of damage to Giratina. Giratina is going to no-shield and get KO'd. Opponent is going to send in their own Duskmane. Duskmane can survive one Aqua Tail, so the opponent could potentially look to no-shield and overfarm quite significantly. They actually decide to invest shields into their Duskmane. They're forced to throw energy. Palkia going to let this through, and then, honestly, not a bad idea to send in Bewear. You have a decent matchup, well, as long as you shield the Sunsteel Strike, and in the back, they have their own Palkia. Palkia Duskmane, just a very, very popular core across the board, like the Palkia Solgaleo core was, but Duskmane just ends up being a lot more flexible than Solga, due to the fact that Sunsteel Strike is just an incredibly powerful move. We're going to see the Dark Pulse connect. This Aqua Tail will not be enough to knock out, so we will see the no-shield by the Duskmane. Duskmane is going to look to overfarm and then go for the Dark Pulse. Opponent in a very difficult position. They are going to let the Palkia go. In comes their Duskmane, and they're forced to fire off energy. A Dark Pulse could have potentially been reached, and now it's all up to Bewear. Bewear is going to make it to back-to-back superpowers and actually go a bit past that. So Bewear just looking for the farm down here. The Sunsteel Strike is going to be shielded, and now Bewear is going to fire off its energy. The superpower does get shielded. There's superpower number 2. Bewear ensuring it had enough Shadow Claw damage to where a superpower would actually be lethal. Hopping into the final match, that's a choice by the opponent as they lead Kyogre into fixed Palkia. Kyogre, I just really don't see a place for in the current Master League meta. If it's aligned against a Palkia, there's just zero play whatsoever. As we see a Rise notification, let's go, shout out the homie Rise. We're going to see the Dark Pulse connect onto the Dialga, and Dark Pulse number 2 will be able to secure the knockout. The Dark Pulse does get shielded by the opponent, so they do want to make a play for switch advantage. Both Pokemon getting very low, but considering you Palkia on Kyogre, you are not going to concede switch. Duskmane is going to get a full farm down. In comes Kyogre. Oh no, unfortunately not able to connect with that energy. But there's good news, as in the back, it is Duskmane. Duskmane going to fire off energy. Bewear is going to no shield. It is just going to be the Dark Pulse from the Duskmane. And it's all over for the opponent. There's nothing they can do. They weren't able to win switch in the mid game, and that is a must if you're running Kyogre. It's just far too alignment dependent. Bewear with the no shield. I'm amazed the opponent is still in this match trying to play out this game. Bewear goes for the superpower that will be no shielded. In comes Palkia, and right on cue, opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. All in all, these were some very entertaining battles, so thank you so much for the battle submission. As I mentioned at the start, Bewear is not a Pokemon that you're going to be able to use to get consistent gains in the Master League. The combat power difference between the top meta stuff, like the Palkias of the world, and Bewear is just too significant. But occasionally, you can get some very fun highlights with it, and that's what this was. Ficht mentioned in his notes that he ended up going right around neutral with the team. I think maybe like 1 or 2 games below 50% win rate. So overall did pretty decently considering there was a Bewear on the team. But yeah, again, big thank you for sending in these battles. And man, Dawn Wings was in absolute shambles today. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.